Hi, I'm Eileen Monreale, president of Friends of Olmsted Beale House. It's a historic house that you see here, uh, and our mission at Friends of Olmsted Beale House is to protect, preserve, and present the historic site in Eltonville. And I am joined here with a Felicity Beale, a Friends of Olmsted Beale House board member, and a great talent and specialty in giant interactive bubble fun for children. She's here to share a little bit about this today. Felicity, would you care to talk about a few of these images that we're going to share today?
Sure.
There we go. Move on to the first image.
Oh, here we are at Olmsted Beale House during a springtime event. You can see it's kids and their parents having fun together. I love it when the adults facilitate the kids so that they have the best success with the bubble making. There they are. Sometimes kids are so small that it's better if the parents make the bubbles so that the kids can have all the fun of popping them and none of the challenge of making them. I see an audience that it varies widely in ages, and that's pretty true. Making interactive bubbles does have a universal appeal. Every kids of all ages, as they say. Oh, here we are at Conference House Park, right next to Biddle House. And we've collected an older group of kids, but they're still having most of their fun by popping the bubbles that are made. You'll see them jump and stretch, leap. Everyone's trying to get the most bubbles that they can.
Absolutely. I am just amazed at the kids getting them outdoors, away from their computers, running physical in nature. I'm delighted when I see this happening, and the parents love it, and it's for all ages. So much fun, Felicity.
Yep.
So that ends the slideshow. So I am going to stop sharing my screen and hopefully that we could just chat a little bit more about the giant bubbles. Like I said, I am just fascinated with it, and we've had volunteers who are teenagers in their 20s, and they come and they help out, and they're like, I want to have this at my next party. Like this is amazing, and if we have 100 people in the park for an event, I'd say like 90 of them are running over to the bubbles, and it's amazing. So that's why I wanted you to share more about it. Um, Tell us when you first learned how to make this, because nobody seems to know how to do this except for you.
It's very messy, so I understand if people chicken out. Um, but I started learning, well, I started with the silly stuff that you can buy anywhere with the miniature bubble wands and the little tiny stuff that you get at the supermarket and everywhere. But I got into giant bubbles beginning in 1987 when this book was published. It's called The Unbelievable Bubble Book, and it had a formula for how to make film, bubble film that's strong enough so that you can make really big bubbles if you have the right equipment. And bound into the spine of the book, there was a tool that works to make giant bubbles. So that looked like this. And the reason that you can make giant bubbles is that the film gets stretched out in a quite a big shape. And that's what it takes to make giant bubbles. But it does get messy. And I there are so many formulas available now on the internet. If you just Google giant bubbles, you'll get a gazillion recipes. My advice to people who are just starting out is read the recipe. And if it includes ingredients that bees and wasps enjoy, keep searching, find another recipe, because you don't want your kids covered with speckles of things that interest stinging insects.
Good advice. Good advice. And so over the years, did you have to adapt your recipe or?
You know, I didn't do a lot of work on recipes, only identifying problems like stinging insects and like that. Really, I just kept shopping on the internet, but where I did some amount of work designing new tools to make bubbles. So, um, I really wanted to have enough tools so that many children could make bubbles, not just I made, which is interesting, but there's more. There's more. So I started experimenting with how to make uh, string that's thick enough to carry enough bubble juice so that you can make big bubbles. So any kind of towels, thick string, so that you can make a triangle shape and get the whole shape wet, and then you're good to go with the right bubble formula. So starting in 1988, I guess, I started experimenting with um, multiple bubble making tools. So it got a little crazy. I once found advice from someone who was a retired chemist and a bubble fanatic as bad as
Ah,
me, or maybe worse. And
oh,
he said he takes apart mop heads and gets the fat cotton cord out of them. So I followed in his footsteps. That sounded really good. So I braided them, and then that looks like this. So
ah.
the string, if you have multiple strands, winds out quite substantial.
Must
Not
make
it.
huge bubbles with that.
Yeah. This makes the biggest ones, but because the drip factor from these so big that you have to warn people back away. It's going to be messy when it pops.
But messy but
That's
big bubbles. So
spectacular. Fun to watch, but not fun when they pop.
and you call those tools, and I think of
Yeah.
them as a wand, but the wands that you have small ones, big ones, colorful ones, triangle ones. Do you have a heart? I feel like you have all different shapes. A heart shape, I don't know, maybe not.
The str just well, um, I may make as big as I couldn't lift anything bigger than my biggest one. Because you lift it up and the wind blows and it's full of heavy and our limits. And also if it's windy day, big is not the most, because if it's big, it's fragile. So therefore, I started making little ones, which could then be colorful. So a rainbow,
Oh, they're
you're
beautiful.
moving it around. It's not, it doesn't make things as big as the other one, but it's more kid friendly.
And
So if
some of
you're,
them will let out 20 or so bubbles, where other ones just let out one, right? It's beautiful to see a lot of them.
it's yeah, yeah. And some of it is how you use it. This one can make one big one, or if you open and close it, it it can make many in succession. Um, but for really windy days and for entertaining a large group of kids, I think this is what you were thinking of. This when it's opened out, it's hard to do this on a little camera, but it's a web,
We get,
and it's
yeah, it looks like a
made of,
big net.
yeah, that's what it looks like in person. That
And
it's
I love the rainbow colors.
it's it has to have a weight at the bottom because the surface tension is so strong. It doesn't cooperate unless you have a web. And I do find that um, some kids can't coordinate doing two at once. So for them, I have dip and wave things that could be called a wand. So they look like this
Ah, yes, yes.
wave, and um, the circle has very thick yarn on it, and it's the surface is broken up into segments with thinner string, and that's to make multiple bubbles because that makes it stronger. So it's more kid friendly.
I love it. I've seen the kids using that. And again, I love the colors. I feel like when we have all these different tools, wands sitting around on our, we use a big plastic tablecloth to lay everything on to keep it clean. But when everything's spread around, it just looks gorgeous. And then you have the kids and the adults just having so much fun. It's amazing. Something so simple is so wonderful.
And it's
Um,
good clean fun for pandemic moments, which we went through, and we managed to have a big fun interactive. I'm thinking about some of those slides in the slideshow that showed masks, but
yes,
feeling very safe, masks and the soap.
it was wonderful during the pandemic to host that event and see everybody come out and enjoy it. Um,
I had two more strange bubble tools to
oh,
show you.
sure. Tell us.
Did a Halloween autumn event, and for that I made a bat. Now, wouldn't you love to think that this comes out with bat shaped bubbles, but it doesn't. They average themselves out into three or so medium sized bubbles and one little one from where the head is. But never
Ah,
mind. The kids have fun flying the bats around and making bubbles because the
I love
wand
it.
is bat shaped.
I love it.
Um, the strangest bubble experiment I did was using this as a bubble maker by just dipping the whole potato chip holder into
Ah,
the making stuff and wait. And the had some fun, doesn't make big bubbles. So went back to the bats and the more standard things, the two-handled nets and such.
I love the bats, and even if they don't come out in the shape of a bat, I'm thinking you could have bat cookies already pre-made, just pulling the theme together for a nice autumn event. That's beautiful. You're so creative, Felicity. Um, I know that when Olmsted Family Fun Day in 2023, in your absence, that's when you gave us wonderful, detailed instructions on step by step how to do this, and that's when I became like, oh Lord, this is not just give the kids wands and bubbles. It was so you could tell that there was years and years of experience here. And certainly, if anybody would like a copy of those instructions, which I do happen to have here, they are a full page. So if anybody would like a copy, just email info@olmstedfieldhouse.org. You could use the QR code that was earlier, or go to our website and you'll see the email address. We'd be happy to send you the step-by-step instructions from 2+ decades of experience from Felicity. Just to go back on so the first time you managed doing these bubbles was 1987, you would say?
The first time I did it for a crowd was probably in the 90s.
90s. So still a long time ago, which is wonderful. And what's your favorite memories, or one of your favorite memories of your experiences at events with these giant bubbles?
Just every time, I cannot choose a favorite memory because every time that you do giant bubbles, people enjoy it. People of all ages. It's a human thing that people love things that are open-ended, slightly unpredictable. If you do something, you won't get exactly the same result. And yet there's a learning curve and there are patterns to it. So really watching visitors get it. They start not having the skill and not having the most best results that could be had. And if they love it within the scope of their attention span, they get it. Because
Yes.
you have to do it and pay attention. And by the end of doing it, you've learned to pay attention to the wind and nature and your surroundings, and where is the wind going to be just the right strength and coming from the right direction. There's a lot to having this kind of fun if you feel like paying attention. Otherwise, you dip the wand in and you wait, and that's fun too.
And that's what's really wonderful is you can have a 4-year-old child who kind of, even if they're not at the best dipper, if they get the right size and they hold it up, they're amazed. We tell them just turn, just spin, and maybe the mom or dad or somebody will help them hold it up. But certainly all ages can enjoy it, which is wonderful. I remember at Couch Camp on Staten Island, we had an event, and where we were was a little bit up in the woods. At Berlin Lodge. So Felicity went down to the trail and started doing her bubbles. And before we knew it, she had like 20 or 30 people just stopping by to see her bubbles. And they were all having a blast. And she said, why don't you go up to Berlin Lodge? And sure enough, the bubbles just are such a beautiful attraction for everybody. They love them. I was, when you're in your absence, like I say in 2023, when I was in charge of the cleanup. And that I was amazed at. There's a lot of cleanup because you have the wands and you have to rinse them. So if you have 15 or so wands, right? Tell us about the cleanup process.
It gets easier with experience. Vinegar helps, as acid and base and what you want to control. Because if you don't wands, they don't perform well. Eventually, the soap can eat them, can fall apart. Um, but I usually roll up each wand, even in its soapy state, to keep it from tangling.
Yes, and I did not do that. So I wound up with all these tangled, like it's like when your necklaces get tangled. But I untangled them and I learned my lesson. Don't let them get tangled. Um, because they are each individually so important for the next time, and they're not easy to make these tools each time. I think that's part of the success of the giant bubbles. Um, I, I guess I feel like, again, if anybody wants the years of experience with the recipe and the tips on how to succeed with bubbles, one of the tips is get the whole string into the bubbles to make the liquid. But you're always there to guide them, which is wonderful. What advice would you have for the guide who's managing the
Ah, um, remember that it's deeply engaging if you're enjoying it that way, and more people have fun and take turns. So it's managing and facilitating. Um, get the whole string wet, try to not have down because they pick up dirt, leaves and such, and that in the water, and it pops the bubbles.
right?
That's that's the important. And yeah, making sure every will turn and give someone else a turn. Make sure that kids are clear who's making bubbles, who's popping bubbles. Don't
Yeah.
let kids pop the bubble, people who don't want their bubbles. That's that's another thing I like about the net bubble maker is that it make so many bubbles that the kids who are inclined can pop my and leave all the other kids. They usually don't want them to be popped.
Yes, they want them to float away high, and luckily the kids are short, so they don't have too much of a chance before they float up and away. So yes, but it's always wonderful. It's always a huge hit at our events, and I love seeing, especially because they're outdoors, they're physical, they're happy, and it's a free low cost event, especially if we provide the bubbles and the wands. That I just feel it's such a wonderful, and I thank you so much for sharing about this, Felicity. Is there anything before we end or final remarks?
Wait, spring, get out, have.
Yes, we are waiting for spring. Well, thank you so much again, and anybody who would like that copy of the Giant Interactive Bubbles for Fun created by Felicity with all of her tips, just email us and we'd be happy to share it. Thank you, Felicity.
Thank you.